I don't remember how long I sat there in the dark, staring at the glowing screen. Part of me wanted to wake Daniel right then and demand an explanation. Another part, some cooler, more strategic instinct, told me to wait, to gather proof before confronting him. I opened the email thread with Lucas Perry and reread each message, this time with fresh eyes. All the confident language about timelines, contracts, and deliverables now felt hollow. I realized he had never once included an official company email address, only a generic Gmail account. He'd insisted on phone calls for anything sensitive, another red flag I'd ignored because Daniel vouched for him. At the bottom of the last email, I saw the supposed tax identification number for Lyra Dynamics. I copied it and ran a search through the IRS EIN database. No match. I tried again. Nothing. My stomach twisted. All this time, I'd told my team, my accountant, even my attorney that this contract was as secure as anything I'd ever signed. And why wouldn't I believe that? My own husband had vouched for it. At 1:14 a.m., I called our corporate lawyer, Marcy Dawson, even though I knew she'd be asleep. I didn't care. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice groggy but instantly concerned when she heard mine. "Veronica, what's wrong?" "I need you to verify something for me," I said, my voice trembling. "Right now." Within 20 minutes, she was logged in from her home office, looking through the same files I'd sent over. "Veronica," she said slowly after several minutes of silence, "I don't know how to tell you this, but these documents are forgeries. Whoever created them used templates that mimic real contracts, but the registration numbers and signatures don't match any known entities." I covered my mouth, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. "Is there any chance this is a mistake?" "No," Marcy said firmly. "I'm so sorry. This isn't a real company." I thanked her numbly and hung up. When I looked up from the screen, it was 2:02 a.m. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Daniel was still asleep upstairs, unaware that the truth was unfolding room by room. I knew I couldn't pretend to be ignorant until morning, so I did what any businesswoman would do. I started collecting evidence. First, I backed up every text, email, and file related to Lyra Dynamics to a secured cloud folder only I could access. Then I went through Daniel's email account. My hands shook as I typed in the password, his birthday, ironically, and watched the inbox load. There, plain as day, was a folder labeled Lyra Project. I opened it and scanned the contents. Dozens of messages between Daniel and Lucas, discussing exactly how they planned to siphon the funds from my company account. One message made my vision blur with rage. "Once she wires the initial investment, we'll transfer it into the shell account by end of day. She'll never see it coming. She trusts me too much to ask questions." It was dated 3 days ago. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath, trying not to scream. I had been so eager to believe in this opportunity, so convinced that Daniel's involvement made it safe, that I hadn't bothered to consider he might be the threat himself. By 3:00 a.m., I'd downloaded everything: emails, phone records, transaction details, and saved them in multiple places. One copy went to my lawyer, and another to an encrypted drive in my safe. Finally, I sat back in my chair, exhausted and hollow. All at once, memories began to replay in my mind like scenes from a film. The night Daniel came home late, saying he was meeting with investors. The calls he took in the garage, door closed. The sudden urgency he'd shown to finalize the deal. The way he'd started saying, "Trust me, Veronica, I know what I'm doing," every time I asked a question. I hadn't wanted to see it. I had chosen not to see it. And now, my entire company was hours away from wiring millions of dollars to a ghost business, straight into my husband's trap. At 3:30 a.m., I heard footsteps on the stairs. I looked up, heart thudding as Daniel walked into the kitchen in sweatpants and a t-shirt. "V?" he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing up?" I forced my expression to remain neutral. "Just working," I said, closing the laptop before he could see the screen. "Couldn't sleep?" He stepped closer, studying me with that disarming smile he'd used 1,000 times. "You're too driven for your own good," he teased, leaning down to kiss the top of my head. I didn't flinch, but inside, something shriveled and died. He stood there for another moment waiting for me to look up. When I didn't, he sighed and turned back toward the stairs. "Come to bed soon," he said over his shoulder. "You'll make yourself sick." When he was gone, I finally let out a shuddering breath. I knew then that I couldn't wait until morning to act. The money transfer was scheduled for 9 a.m., and if I hesitated, everything I'd worked for would be gone. I picked up my phone and called Marcy back. "It's me," I whispered, as if Daniel could hear me through the floorboards. "I'm not waiting for business hours. I want the transfer blocked now." Marcy didn't question me. "I'll contact the bank immediately," she said. "Stay safe, Veronica. This is going to get messy." When I hung up, I looked around my home office. The awards on the shelves, the framed photos from conferences, from trips I'd taken with Daniel back when I still believed he was the best thing that had ever happened to me. The life we'd built together. It was all a lie. But in that moment, standing alone in the dark, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't let him take one more thing from me. My name is Veronica Hale, and if you had told me 2 months ago that my life and my business would implode because of a single text message, I would have laughed. I'm 38 years old, the founder and CEO of Aurora Insight Group, a boutique consulting firm based in Austin, Texas. Over the last 6 years, I built this company from nothing, just me, a rented co-working desk, and a laptop that overheated if you used it longer than 4 hours. My husband, Daniel Hale, has always been my closest ally, or so I believed. We met a decade ago at an entrepreneurship conference in Chicago. He was the keynote speaker, charismatic and self-assured, already the founder of a successful logistics startup. I was newly out of grad school, still convincing myself I could make something out of my ideas. Daniel was the first person who took me seriously. He'd walk with me through my business plans, challenge me, and encourage me to take risks. We married 3 years later and promised each other we would never let work come between us. Ironically, work was the only thing that ever brought us closer. Daniel eventually sold his company for a tidy sum and launched a new venture, an investment firm focusing on green technology. Our businesses were separate, but we still collaborated often. He'd introduce me to contacts. I'd share leads with him. We understood each other's long hours and late nights in a way nobody else could. About 6 weeks ago, Daniel came to me with what he called a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. "Veronica," he said over dinner one evening, "this could triple your revenue by the end of the year." He explained that a renewable energy company called Lyra Dynamics was looking for a strategic consulting partner. They were about to roll out a multi-million-dollar project to bring solar infrastructure to underserved rural communities in Texas. The contract was valued at nearly $12 million over the first 2 years alone. I felt my chest tighten at the possibility. "They already know you by reputation," Daniel said. "I can make the introduction." "Are you sure this isn't too close for comfort?" I asked. "Mixing business and marriage?" "Come on," he teased. "We've been mixing business and marriage since day one." I knew he was right. So, I agreed. That's how it started. An innocent-sounding opportunity I had no reason to question. Over the next few weeks, I met with a man named Lucas Perry, who claimed to be Lyra's chief development officer. He had a slick presentation, detailed financial projections, and what looked like legitimate company credentials. The proposal was aggressive. They wanted Aurora Insight Group to handle everything: market research, stakeholder engagement, project management. In return, they were prepared to pay a retainer that would cover our operating costs for at least a year. But there was a catch. I'd have to commit all my liquid capital upfront, almost $3 million, to secure the first phase of the project. I hesitated. "It's a risk," I admitted to Daniel one night as we reviewed the documents in bed. "If this goes sideways, I'm sunk." "It won't," he assured me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Lucas is solid. I've known him for years." Looking back, I wonder if there was already something in his voice that should have tipped me off, some false note I was too tired to hear. 2 days before everything unraveled, I was sitting in my office late at night, reviewing the final paperwork for the investment. My entire team was ready. Our legal counsel had flagged a few minor concerns, but nothing we couldn't clarify. I decided to finalize the capital rotation the following Monday. "You're doing the right thing," Daniel told me as he kissed my forehead. "This is going to change everything for you." I believed him. I'd always believed him. Then came the night that would split my life into before and after. It was a Thursday, and I'd fallen asleep early. The exhaustion of the past month had caught up to me, and I remember feeling relieved to finally rest. At exactly 12:07 a.m., a text alert buzzed on Daniel's phone, which lay on the nightstand between us. Normally, I would have ignored it, but the noise startled me awake, and for a reason I still can't fully explain, I turned my head to look. The message preview was short. Just one sentence. "In a few hours, we'll be together." My heart gave a strange lurch. I sat up, trying to convince myself it was a work message, but my gut knew better. I picked up the phone, hands trembling, and opened the conversation. The previous messages were all there. "Did you tell her yet? She trusts you completely. After tomorrow, we'll be set for life." I felt the world tilt sideways. I scrolled up, needing to see the contact name. It was just a number, no name attached. But in that moment, I knew this was no business partner. I glanced over at Daniel, who was still asleep, breathing evenly as if nothing in his life was about to explode. The rest of the night was a blur of adrenaline. I crept into my office and powered up my laptop, my mind spinning. Lyra Dynamics. I pulled up the Secretary of State's business registration website and typed the name into the database. Nothing. I tried again, adding keywords, searching under every category. Still nothing. My skin went cold. I opened the documents Lucas had sent me and began cross-referencing every detail: addresses, tax IDs, signatures. One by one, the pieces fell apart. The company didn't exist. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like I might be sick. Daniel hadn't just been lying about an affair. He had been preparing to steal everything I'd spent my adult life building. And the worst part was, I'd almost let him. By the time dawn broke over Austin, I had been awake for almost 24 hours. My body felt like it was running on static electricity and pure adrenaline. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, waiting for the confirmation from Marcy that the transfer had been formally blocked. Every time the phone vibrated, my heart jumped into my throat. At 7:02 a.m., a new text arrived, this one from the private banker I'd worked with for years, Elaine Markham. "Veronica, per your counsel's instructions, we've placed an immediate hold on the outgoing wire. No funds will be released until we speak with you directly." I let out a shaky breath and closed my eyes. That was the first real relief I'd felt in hours. I was still staring at the screen when I heard Daniel's footsteps overhead. He was up early, probably because he expected today to be the payday that would set him and his mistress up for life. For a brief, insane moment, I thought about pretending nothing was wrong, smiling, packing his lunch, kissing him goodbye. But the idea made me nauseous. Instead, I opened my email and typed a single message to him. "We need to talk before you leave this house." I hit send. A few seconds later, I heard his phone buzz in the upstairs bedroom. He came down the stairs 10 minutes later, hair still damp from the shower, looking exactly like the man I'd once trusted more than anyone. For a heartbeat, my mind tried to overlay this version of him over the man in the emails, the man plotting to steal everything I'd built. "V, what's this about?" he asked, trying for casual. But his eyes flicked to my laptop, and I saw the flicker of unease there. "Sit down," I said evenly. He didn't move. "What's going on?" I picked up the stack of printed emails I'd compiled overnight and dropped them on the table between us. "You tell me." He glanced at the papers, then back at me. "What is this?" I could practically see him calculating which story to tell, whether to deny, deflect, or disarm me. "You know exactly what it is," I said. "It's every message you've exchanged with Lucas Perry about funneling my company's money into your shell corporation." His jaw tightened. "Veronica, you're exhausted," he began, his voice calm and patronizing. "You've been working too much. You're seeing connections that aren't there." That was when I knew there was no coming back from this. "The wire transfer is blocked," I said flatly. "The bank has frozen any outgoing funds. So if you were planning to celebrate with her tonight, you're out of luck." For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just stared at me with something like contempt. Or maybe it was the look of a man who'd finally been caught. "I don't know what you think you've accomplished," he said quietly, "but you've just blown up the biggest opportunity you'll ever have." I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "You mean the opportunity for you and your mistress to steal everything I've worked for?" His face hardened further. "You're going to regret this." "No," I said calmly. "I'm not." He didn't try to argue further. He turned and walked back upstairs, every step echoing like a funeral drumbeat. I stayed at the table listening to drawers opening and closing as he packed. I wondered if he'd go to her, the woman who'd texted him at midnight, so confident in their plan that she couldn't even wait until morning to gloat. When he finally came down with his overnight bag, he paused at the door. "This isn't over," he said. I looked him in the eye. "Yes, it is." Then I turned back to my laptop and didn't watch him leave. The house felt cavernous after the door clicked shut. For a few minutes I sat frozen, unable to process that the man I'd trusted most had orchestrated the single greatest betrayal of my life. Then I stood up, closed the laptop, and did something I hadn't done in years. I called my older brother, Eli Whitman. Growing up, Eli and I had been close, but after my wedding, I'd let that relationship drift. Daniel never said I couldn't be close to my family, but he had a way of making it clear that my loyalty should always be to him first. When Eli picked up, his voice was warm and a little surprised. "V, everything okay?" The sound of someone who genuinely cared about me was too much. My voice cracked. "No," I whispered. "Everything's falling apart." "Talk to me," he said gently. So I did. I told him everything about the project, the shell company, the text message, and the frozen funds. I half expected him to be angry at me for being so naive. But all he said was, "You did the right thing. You stopped it in time." Hearing that gave me the first sense of hope I'd felt all night. Later that morning, I met with Marcy in person at her office downtown. We spread the documents out across a conference table, analyzing every piece of evidence. "What are my options?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "First, you've protected your company," she said firmly. "That's critical. No money left your accounts. Second, you have clear documentation showing intent to defraud." "Can I press charges?" "Yes," she said. "And you should." This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate fraud. Part of me wanted to hesitate, to give him a chance to explain. But then I thought of that text message, of his voice when he called me dramatic every time I asked questions, and I felt the last flicker of sympathy extinguish. "Then let's do it," I said. Marcy nodded. I'll draft the filings today. When I stepped out onto Congress Avenue an hour later, the Texas sun was already blazing. I stood there for a moment, letting the light hit my face, feeling the magnitude of what I'd just set in motion. My marriage was over. My illusions were gone. But my company was still mine. And that, at least, was something he couldn't take. That evening, after filing the initial fraud complaint, I went back to my empty house. I thought I'd feel victorious, like I'd reclaimed something Daniel tried to steal. Instead, I felt hollow. I moved from room to room, collecting the small tokens of our life together. A photo of us on the Amalfi Coast, a framed copy of the first check my company ever received, a bottle of wine we'd been saving for when the big deal closes. Funny how quickly everything had become tainted. By 9 p.m., my phone began to vibrate with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them until finally one call came in from a local area code. On instinct, I answered. A woman's voice, cool, practiced, and unfamiliar, spoke first. "Veronica, this is Sienna Drake. I'm the attorney representing Mr. Hale." I didn't respond. "I understand there has been some confusion regarding your business transaction with Lyra Dynamics." My throat went tight. "There's no confusion, there's documented fraud." "We believe this is an unfortunate misunderstanding," she said smoothly, "and we'd like to resolve this amicably before it escalates." I almost laughed. "Is this the part where you ask me to withdraw the complaint?" "We're simply requesting that you reconsider before involving law enforcement further," she continued, her tone still maddeningly even. "My client is prepared to offer you a settlement." "A settlement?" I repeated, disbelief edging into anger. "Yes, a substantial payment in exchange for closing this matter quietly." "No," I said, voice steady. "Tell your client he can't buy his way out of this." For the first time, her voice lost some of its polish. "Veronica, you should know this will become public record. That could affect your reputation, your business." I didn't let her finish. If he was so concerned about reputations, he shouldn't have tried to steal from me. I ended the call. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down, but beneath the adrenaline, I felt something clearer than I'd felt in days: resolve. Over the next week, everything moved faster than I expected. The sheriff's office took my statement in person. 2 deputies came to my home to review the evidence I'd compiled. They were polite but serious, and when they left with a box of printed emails and flash drives, it felt like closing a door I could never open again. On Thursday afternoon, Marcy called. "The district attorney's office has agreed to pursue criminal charges," she told me. "Fraud, attempted theft, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." I swallowed hard. "And Daniel?" "He'll be served with a notice to appear. They'll likely arrest Lucas Perry as well." I didn't ask how long they could go to prison if convicted. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. That night, Eli came over with takeout and sat with me while I sifted through the wreckage of my plans. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" I asked him as I picked at a plate of pad thai I couldn't taste. "You are," he said without hesitation. "You gave him every chance to be honest, and he chose this. You're just protecting yourself." "I keep thinking maybe I should have seen it sooner," I whispered. The late nights, the sudden urgency, the way he brushed off my questions. Eli set his chopsticks down and leaned forward. "Veronica, you trusted your husband. That's not weakness. That's what marriage is supposed to be." The simplicity of that truth broke me. I pressed my hands to my face and cried until my ribs hurt, Eli's hand on my shoulder the only thing keeping me from falling apart. The following morning, I woke up to a news alert. Local business owner and associate charged in multi-million-dollar fraud investigation. The article was short but brutal. My name was in it. So was Daniel's. And Lucas's mugshot was already circulating online. Within the hour, my phone started buzzing again. Reporters, former clients, friends who hadn't heard from me in years. I ignored them all. Instead, I went into my office and sent an email to every member of my staff. Team, I want you to hear this from me directly. Some of you may have seen the news this morning. I want to be clear. Aurora Insight Group is not accused of any wrongdoing. We are victims of a sophisticated fraud attempt, and all our accounts remain secure. If you have questions or concerns, my door is open. We will get through this. Veronica, at 11 a.m., I finally forced myself to answer a call from an old mentor, Gina Patel, who'd helped me get Aurora off the ground. Veronica? She said as soon as I picked up. I just read the article. Are you okay? For the first time, I didn't try to pretend. Not really, I admitted, but I will be. You're stronger than you know, she told me. Don't let this define you. By evening, the media had moved on to something else. But in my own life, the fallout kept spreading. Daniel tried to call me twice. I let it ring. Then he texted, "You're overreacting. We can fix this." I blocked the number. He'd made his choice. And now, I was making mine. That night, I sat alone on the back patio with a glass of wine I didn't finish, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to imagine a future that didn't include him. One where my company and my life belonged solely to me again. I didn't know what it would look like yet, but I knew this much. I was done giving people the benefit of the doubt when they hadn't earned it, and I was done apologizing for protecting everything I'd built. In the weeks that followed the charges against Daniel and Lucas, my life split into two distinct timelines. By day, I was CEO Veronica Hale, calm, professional, laser-focused on keeping Aurora Insight Group steady through the turbulence. By night, I was simply a woman trying to make sense of how her husband had nearly ruined her. Every morning, I'd stand in front of the mirror and repeat the same mantra. You stopped him. You saved your company. You are not a victim. Some days, I believed it. Other days, I wasn't so sure. One Tuesday morning, Marcy called with an update. Daniel's lawyer has reached out again, she said. They're offering to settle civilly if you'll agree to drop the criminal complaint. I felt my jaw tighten. How much? A 7-figure settlement. They're hoping money will make this disappear. For a brief moment, I thought about what that money could do. I could expand the business, take some pressure off my team, or even just put the nightmare behind me. But every time I imagined accepting it, I heard Daniel's voice in my head. You'll regret this. No amount of money was worth proving him right. Tell them no, I said. Tell them I'm not interested in buying silence. That afternoon, I called an all-hands meeting with my staff. 24 faces appeared on my screen, some anxious, others quietly supportive. I took a steadying breath and began. I want you all to know that the worst is behind us. The contract was fraudulent, but because we caught it in time, every dollar stayed in Aurora's accounts. Our clients are staying, and our reputation remains intact. I paused, looking at the team that had worked late nights and weekends right alongside me. I also need to apologize. I allowed my trust in someone to blind me to red flags I should have seen. That's on me. But I promise you, nothing like this will ever happen again. No one spoke for a moment. Then my operations director, Jada Lopez, unmuted. Veronica, she said, her voice steady. We believe in you. This wasn't your fault. Dozens of nodding heads filled the screen. It was the first time I'd felt truly supported since this all began. A few days later, Eli invited me to dinner. We sat on his porch overlooking Lake Travis, the breeze ruffling our hair, while his wife brought us iced tea and their kids played in the yard. How are you holding up? He asked gently. Better, I said. And for once, it wasn't a lie. I was worried about you, he admitted. You've always been the strong one, but sometimes the strong ones forget they're allowed to break. I looked out at the water, blinking back tears. I don't think I've let myself break yet, I whispered. Eli didn't try to fix it. He just reached over and took my hand. When you're ready to fall apart, you have somewhere to do it, he said. That was all I needed to hear. The next morning, I met with Detective Rivera, who was handling the criminal case. We sat in a small conference room at the police station, the air too cold and fluorescent. Daniel's arraignment is set for next week, she said. He's still out on bail, but he's cooperating with the investigation. I nodded, my heart hammering as she slid a stack of documents across the table. We'll need you to testify, she continued. Your statement will be key in proving intent. I stared at the papers. Testify. It felt surreal. A few months ago, I'd trusted Daniel more than anyone. Now, I was preparing to stand in court and help send him to prison. I'll do it, I said quietly. He doesn't get to walk away from this. That evening, I drove home through the dusky Austin streets, the sky streaked pink and orange. I thought about everything I'd lost, my marriage, my certainty, my blind faith. But I also thought about what I'd gained. I was free, in a way I hadn't been for years, free to rebuild my business without compromise, free to choose who deserved my trust, free to finally, truly be my own person again. When I got home, I pulled out a cardboard box from the back of my closet. Inside were the last reminders of the life I'd shared with Daniel, wedding photos, anniversary cards, the cufflinks I'd given him when he sold his first company. One by one, I set them on the kitchen table. I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I just looked at them for what they were, relics of a story that had ended. Then I packed them away for good. The next morning, I met Marcy at her office to sign the final paperwork dissolving any financial ties between Daniel and me. As I flipped through the last pages, she gave me a small, sympathetic smile. This is the last step, she said gently. After this, he has no legal claim to you or your business. I signed my name with a steady hand. Then let's be done, I said. And I meant it. By the time I got back to Aurora, the sun was high, pouring through the office windows. My assistant greeted me with a cup of coffee and a tentative smile. Rough morning? She asked. I shook my head. No, I said, feeling something I hadn't felt in months, a flicker of lightness. It's the first good morning I've had in a long time. That night I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights, and allowed myself to imagine the future again. A future that didn't have Daniel in it. A future that belonged entirely to me. And for the first time, that didn't feel scary. It felt like freedom. A week later, I sat in the witness stand of a beige-walled courtroom, my palms resting on the polished wood. Daniel was 10 feet away at the defense table wearing the same tailored navy suit he used to wear to board meetings. I wondered if he thought it made him look credible. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The district attorney, a woman named Carla Hewitt, stood beside me. Her voice was steady as she asked me to recount everything. How Daniel introduced me to Lyra Dynamics. How he assured me it was legitimate. How he convinced me to risk everything I'd worked for. I kept my voice calm and factual. I trusted him, I said. He was my husband. I had no reason to believe he would lie. And when did you realize it was a fraud? Carla asked. The night I saw a text message on his phone. That's when I started digging. In the back row, Eli sat with his arms crossed over his chest, watching Daniel with a look that could have burned a hole through concrete. When I finished my testimony, Carla asked me if I had anything else to add. I hesitated. Then I turned to the judge. I want to say that this wasn't just about money, I said. It was about trust, about being made to feel like my intuition didn't matter, like my questions were an inconvenience. My voice didn't waver. He tried to take everything from me, but he didn't succeed. When I stepped down from the stand, I felt like I was finally stepping out of a shadow. After the hearing, Eli drove me back to my office. We didn't talk much. There wasn't much left to say. Before he dropped me off, he squeezed my hand. "You did the hardest thing anyone can do," he said quietly. "You stood up for yourself." "I didn't feel brave," I admitted. "That's exactly why you were," he said. "The verdict wouldn't come for weeks, but I already knew I couldn't wait around for closure. There was too much life left to live." The next Monday, I gathered my team for a company meeting in our sunny downtown conference room. "I know the last few months have been some of the most stressful we've ever faced," I began, "but I need you all to hear this. We are not defined by what other people tried to do to us. We're defined by how we responded." I saw nods around the room. Some of my staff looked relieved. Others just looked exhausted. "We got through this together," I continued. "And from here on out, we set the standard for how we protect ourselves and each other." It was the first time since the investigation began that I felt like a leader again. Later that afternoon, my operations director, Jada, came into my office carrying a wrapped box. "What's this?" I asked. "A thank you," she said with a shy smile, "for not giving up." Inside was a small brass plaque engraved with 5 words, "You saved all of us." I pressed my hand to my mouth. "Thank you," I whispered. "No," Jada said firmly. "Thank you." That night, I didn't go home to the empty house. I took a walk along Ladybird Lake, letting the warm air settle on my skin. I thought about everything I'd lost: my marriage, my sense of certainty, my old, unquestioning trust. But in their place, I'd gained something far more valuable: clarity, strength, and a commitment to never again silence my own instincts for the sake of keeping the peace. 3 weeks later, the verdict came in: guilty on all counts. Daniel and Lucas were led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. I felt no triumph in watching it, only a profound sense of finality. Afterward, I went to lunch with Eli. "So," he asked as we sipped coffee on a sunny patio, "what happens now?" I looked out at the street, watching the ordinary life moving past. "I think I just move forward," I said. "Any plans?" I smiled. "I'm going to take a vacation, a real one. No laptops, no deals, no pretending everything's fine when it isn't." Eli grinned. "That sounds perfect." When I got home that evening, I packed away the last box of reminders, photos, contracts, little mementos of a life that no longer existed. Then I walked through each room, feeling lighter than I had in years. This was my home, my business, my life. And no one could ever take that from me again. The next morning, I booked a flight to Costa Rica. I didn't tell anyone except Eli. It felt good to have something that was just mine. When I boarded the plane, I took a long breath and let it out slowly. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Not because everything was fixed, but because I knew, beyond any doubt, that I was strong enough to handle whatever came next.
If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, know this: your worth isn't determined by their actions. Your strength isn't measured by whether you fell for their lies, but by how you got back up. You can rebuild. You can reclaim your life. You can begin again. Thank you for listening to my story.